Continuing our look now at the best in children's television. This morning, the new kid, or dinosaur on the block.
So the big purple reptile that kids can't resist.
The big purple dinosaur.
Teaches about love, and it just kind of like soothes the kids.
And always, there's that signature song.
One of these days, we're going to make Carrie name every single person in our opening. I'm Nancy J, and of course, Carrie, Barney Stinson. Could you do that?
Let's not make it today.
No, I will. No, I will. I'll give you a heads up on that one.
It's good to see you, Nancy. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Carrie?
I'm great.
You know, looking at all the comments from our podcast as well as our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Forget everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Carrie. Wow.
It was very touching this week to see all the responses. You know, you got me to bare my soul a little bit last week, Nancy, and it was.
And there have been comments about some of the tears,
yes,
the teary eyes,
yes.
and everyone loves it.
Yes, I thought I might be able to get you to tear up a little bit. It was me that was tearing up.
Well, but I mean, there can't be both. We both can't do it.
True.
I mean, someone has to be in control.
Very true.
So no, but that was really, really fun. So I mean, have you heard from old friends too, or some other Barney friends?
I have, which has been really great. Seeing some of these responses, people that I've worked with over the years, and of course my friends, and you know, I got pretty emotional talking about my dad and my mom, and they know my dad, and so it was very, very special.
Are you more comfortable now talking about your days as Barney? Because when we met, 12 shows ago,
yes.
You were just a little reticent. You were just, kind of just a little shy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been amazing to see the response, and then getting to be up in Connecticut and do that performance again, and seeing the response and talking to people and how much it means to people is just amazing. Whether it was a grandchild or a child or their experience, So that's why I'm enjoying it so much now.
Your fans want more of that show. They really want to see that retirement show. Do we have?
We'll have to find some more clips.
Well, because what I've been doing is I've just said, call Carrie. So if you get,
we've got more pictures and we do have a little bit.
And that's at purpletailspodcast.com.
Yes, we continue to add.
Good.
And then Purple Tales Live, which we've got going on in June.
Ooh.
We've added that event, and for all that information is on purpletailspodcast.com
it's
as well.
It's a fundraiser.
Absolutely.
And it's going to get some of the characters and some of the...
a lot of the fun people that you've got to meet.
Yeah,
and we get to ask them new questions that we didn't...
Well, we need to get some questions for fans, for sure.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That'll be good. Well, speaking of your fans, I've got some. Actually, this letter kind of made me start to cry. How about that?
Okay.
Somebody else's. I know you. You can't make me cry.
Right,
Gary.
but someone else got to you.
Yeah,
a little bit.
somebody else got to me. But basically, this was from Jordan Smith, and saying that Carrie is without a doubt a good person. Hearing and seeing him choke up talking about his life with Barney is inspiring, and he talked about how he was 8 years old in 98, and that was when he told his mom, "No more Barney. I am done. I don't want to do it," thinking that he was all grown up.
Right.
And he said that she was kind of hurt by that because she was a fan.
Sure.
And, but that was it. So later that year when he told his mom that he was done with Barney, she passed away.
Oh, my goodness.
And while going through her stuff, found all the Barney tapes. She kept them. I'm glad she did. Having my own child now and seeing her light up and smile and jump around with me while watching Barney, it makes me truly believe my mom lives on. Now that teared me up.
Sure.
I mean, that's amazing.
It is.
So thank you, Jordan Smith, for that. Absolutely. And then we have Mike from Ireland. I love this, so I'm calling him Irish Mike. Irish Mike said, seeing Carrie get emotional telling these incredible stories made me emotional, okay? Growing up with Barney, and that he's in his 20s now, and just so glad that the podcast is doing well. Long may it continue. Mike from Ireland, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
I have Mike from Ireland. I love it.
I love it.
And then, okay, this was interesting. Phoebe, she says, I'm a proud Texan. I accept Barney as one of us. Barney is a Texan.
He's a Texan through and through. And that's been so much fun. people coming up to me all the time saying, I thought Barney was from Hollywood or New York, and not realizing Barney's right here, right here.
So Phoebe goes on to say, this is what I was like, Phoebes, come on. People see Barney as if he was Thanos from the Avengers.
Oh, my goodness.
And they think that he's a menace or the Antichrist. Barney just wants to show one thing, love. Barney is so far beyond Thanos. Come on. Barney is... I was going to say Barney's real and Thanos not, but
but Phoebe gets it, right?
Isn't that something?
Right, and we've been seeing that a lot. That when people understand and see what the message was,
absolutely,
they get it.
Absolutely, and looking at those pictures when we come on, it's always so much fun to see the colors, the brightness, the way the set looks.
Yes, yeah, absolutely amazing. And last week I brought all these things that I could find. But I found something else this week. So,
a show and tell.
Show and tell. This came from the Barney set. This is one of the trains.
It's red.
Yeah,
and it's a caboose.
It's a caboose. So on the set, these were the later days sets. Yes, please. In the caboose, we had trains, and that's one of them that I got when we left.
Wow.
There's amazing.
Is there anybody in there?
There isn't. Okay. There isn't. But there's a bunch of history in your hands, and these amazing sets.
Oh my gosh.
And these.
What does this mean to you, Carrie?
Oh my goodness. I spent 12 years on Barney and Friends, and in that caboose, and it was amazing.
It had to be a big. No, wait.
Well, it was a lot bigger than this, obviously. Yeah, it was a lot bigger than this in the park, and these amazing sets that I got to play on for 12 years, and they were designed by Bob Lavallee, who is here with us today.
He's our guest.
He
the
is
set
our
designer,
guest.
Bob.
Hello.
Welcome. You thought we'd never get to you.
Well, I was enjoying all that, so it was great.
It's so great to have you on, Bob.
And I have to tell you that that caboose, that specific caboose, was the prototype that I used to design part of the park set where the caboose showed up. And because what did I know from caboose? I needed one to take measurements, take proportions, that sort of thing. And so, and then it ended up on the set as dressing. And look at me, I'm actually fixing it back right here. That's my job. I just fixed it.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's start at the beginning. Have you always been a set designer? Did you study to become a set designer?
Wow, this is really interesting. There is a story I tell. So my background was I left Vermont. I got into the Air Force. I was an illustrator in the Air Force. Well, what does an illustrator do in the Air Force? I was illustrating tech manuals. So I was at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls. It was a Air Training Command school. And when they came from basic training, they needed to learn their job. Their AFSC is what it was called. Okay. And so they had to go to school to learn how to be this, that, or the other thing. And so there were in this building I was in, there were writers, photographers, television production, where we did little. I wasn't part of that at the time. And my job was to do the illustrations in the tech manuals. So the writer would show up with a pile of tech manual, flip the page, it'd be an empty spot, and we'd fill it in with whatever they wanted to. These were like pen and ink drawings. So I did that then, and then I got out and did the GI Bill, went to school, and my thrust was fine art. So printmaking was my major, and painting was my minor. And so I had a painting studio with my painting instructor, and off campus. So my instructor and I had a studio together, and it was great. But then the rent got raised, and I ended up in the third floor of a building where there was a community theater. And they were renting the building, and they weren't using the third floor. I said, yeah, we'd love somebody else to be, in another discipline in the building. So from there, I'm doing my fine art thing. I'm working on a one-man show, a senior one-man show. And I would come in the building and look down the hall and see these theater people course, I was used to the art department. We were all solitary in our studios, saving the world with our art. And I'd look down the hall, and there were all these theater people who were hugging on each other, being extroverted and having a good time. I thought they were weird.
Right.
But, so one day, after about 3 months of going in, looking down the hall, and going upstairs, there was a rap on the door, and there was a timid little voice. And of course, back then in the 60s, I had long hair, whatever. Timid little voice said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but what kind of paint would I use to paint on this plastic to make stained glass?" Well, 6 weeks later, I had designed the set, painted the set, was on stage singing a solo, met my future wife, the choreographer, and went, "Holy Toledo, these theater people really know how to party." And so knew nothing about theater or that sort of thing, and ended up getting involved in theater. So that led me to doing sets for community theater for free. And it came about going, gee, I think I could do better than that. I could help them out, whatever. And so I did. And from there, other people asked me to do stuff, and it wasn't being paid anything. My job at the time was being an architectural renderer and model builder. I worked for an architect. So,
do you have like perfect little writing?
Perfect little writing? I do. I do. Way back when I actually hand drafted.
Yes.
You have to have perfect little writing.
So, okay, just wanted to make sure.
Right, it's true. So that's how I got into the performing arts and doing set design. So this person who was at this community theater came to Fort Worth, got a job, and this was in 1979, 80, somewhere in there, and the economy wasn't that good. And so I called her up and I said, Bren Bristol was her name. I said, "Is there any work in Fort Worth for a scenic artist?" And she said, "Well, Bob, you should come to Fort Worth and bring your portfolio, because Casa Manana Theater in Fort Worth is looking for a designer." Now, my experience was doing 10 shows in about 8 years.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Right.
But I had a really nice portfolio. So I went and interviewed with him, and he hired me right away.
And let everyone know, Casa Manana was a preeminent theater in the round.
Exactly.
I believe Fort Worth,
there
Texas.
were a number of theaters in the round. There were, at the time I went there was probably 5 more theaters in the round. And it was becoming a something that people wouldn't do, because here's what the problem was. It's theater in the round is really great because it's very intimate.
Sure.
And this is going to segue into Barney, by the way.
Right.
The theater in the round. So it's very intimate because you can sit people all the way around the stage, and so you can get a lot of people in a room, but it's broken up into being all around instead of just frontal. So instead of being way back. So, in that vein, I got to design sets for theater in the round, and then from there went to work in Dallas for Peter Wolf.
Okay,
another huge name.
Peter Wolf.
Oh my goodness!
The man was just really wonderful. So I was at Casa for 5.5 years, and then it was time to move on. So I got recruited to a company in Dallas, and I was there for 3.5 years. And while I was at Peter Wolf's, the people from Barney and Friends, the producers, i.e. Jim Rowley,
yes,
and Ben Vaughn,
yes,
and Jeff Gittle,
yes,
showed up, and they wanted an addition to their present set that they had at Studio A at Las Colinas, and it was a treehouse in the school and whatever. And so,
Barney was already successful.
Barney was already successful.
Yeah, because it actually started in Allen.
Okay.
In that very small little.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they had moved
where
to
they
Las
shoot
Colinas.
one direction, then shoot the other direction.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. And then they moved to Las Colinas.
Okay.
So I remember they came and they wanted something. They wanted something done to an addition to their present set. So I was given that within the company, and so when I went out to the studio, and I knew nothing about video, I have to tell you. Okay, they hired me because they hired Wolf Company and gave me the account. And so I did what they wanted me to do. And while I was in the room, I looked over to one side and saw that there was no set over there. And I went, if they flew this thing in and had this other fence piece come in, they could shoot 360. If there was a tree that hid the part that they couldn't shoot.
Right.
So when it came time for them to get what they hired us for, I showed them that. And they said, great, wonderful. I said, and by the way, you didn't ask me to do this, but I had this idea. And so I showed them this other thing.
Right.
And they went, oh my gosh, we could do that. We could shoot 360. So they ended up doing that. And I didn't hear from them after that. I went on and kept working for Peter. Yes.
So
we've talked about this so many times.
I know. So you're still working for Peter, and you did this Barney thing. I mean, was it something you were proud of? Did you go, it's just a cartoon?
Well, to me, I have to say, I knew nothing from Barney. I knew, I'm an adult. Our kids were older at that time, and so children's television was not anything that I spent time with. But the set was really nice. I remember going and seeing, going, wow, this is really cool, And
it was good, right?
And it was television and whatever. So a year later, they decided they wanted someone local to be their production designer. They loved their present production designer, but he was far away, and so they were getting stuff built here, and they said, I wonder if we could get it done in a place that builds it and designs it at the same time. So they came to Wolf Company, and they said, we would like to hire Bob as our new production designer, and we want to hire him exclusively within the company. Not the company, but so I was given that account, and I then, from then on, was exclusively designing for Barney. So I came up with a new treehouse set. I remember Ben Vaughn walked me into, now a year had passed, so stuff had happened.
Right.
So Ben Vaughn walked me into Studio A, the largest sound stage in the state, huge, as you well know.
Yes.
It was empty. And he said, well, this is where you're going to create Barney's new world. And I was freaked out, because it was this big empty room.
Right.
I had not done television.
Right.
And I asked them, why'd you hire me? I really didn't have any television experience. And they said, Casa Mañana. They said, because we talked to other people before we talked to you, and they had theater experience, but it was all frontal. It was proscenium based. See what I'm saying? It was all flat.
Yes.
We felt that you would have had a more sculptural 3D sensibility, like a camera can go anywhere.
Right.
So that was it. So that's how I got on Barney, and they took a chance and hired me, and I have to say, pulled me up to another plateau. And they were so kind, and they were so patient with me, teaching me video. And there's plenty to talk about that, but anyway, that's how I got to Barney.
But you've always had a visual mind. That's
when I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be an artist, a visual artist of some sort. On the other hand, segue to when I was in the military, I remember I was working in the place where I was doing illustrations. My boss there said, Bob, let me tell you about something about yourself you don't really know, but I know. You're not the alone in the garret guy. You need to work with other people because you're really good at that and you thrive on that. And I went, no, and in my brain, I'm going, no, I'm the artist. I'm the, and so, and I kept gravitating towards others, and it's a collaborative thing. All of this is collaborative, and I love that collaboration.
But it's not typical television. You're dealing with huge pieces of animals. Costumes, children, colors, movement. Trying to keep it simple but not too fancy. How did you put it all together? What What happened?
Well, first off, I really think you have to have a sensibility as to where the show lived. And I'm talking, where does it live? It's not harsh reality, but it's reality. It's not total fantasy either. You know, our home base was a park with a real building and a real caboose so there's that part of it. But there was always a sense of there were lines you don't want to cross. And lighting is another place that is, you don't want the harsh or dramatic lighting of, say, a soap opera, you know? Because that's not Barney. Well, it's hard to do when you're shooting 4-camera television anyway, to sculpt things. But so you get a sensibility from, you get it from the vision carriers, you get it from Dennis, I got it from Jim.
These are directors.
The vision carriers, right.
Okay.
Jim Rowley.
How they talk about things and how they reveal to you who Barney is and who Barney isn't starts to give you a flavor for how to approach things. Okay, so that's kind of and so, you know, when I read a play, I tell people I read a play and I feel the musical mood of the play. There's no music, but as I'm reading the play, I can feel the feeling of the play, and I tend to call it the musical mood of the play. And so Barney had a musical mood to his world, and so that's how that happened. There was an attitude, and you know what I'm talking about.
I do, and you know, all the sets that I played on for all those years, there were so many places to go play. I think that was the part that was so amazing, is that we never went, where do we go now? We've already used this park up. No, there was all kinds of places to go to as we're looking at some of these.
Let's see, we've got a picture right here.
Then let me say, this is how the patience of the producers taught me. I didn't know that I didn't realize, I soon found out, how tall are you in your costume?
Oh, 7 foot.
Okay, you're 7 foot tall, and this is a children's show.
Right.
And the talent next to you is 4 feet tall.
Right.
Or 3.5 feet tall.
Yes.
And they say, well, Bob, if they're always on the same level, we have to pull the camera way back to get them both in the picture. That means we have these constant wide shots which do not feel intimate. See what I'm saying?
I do.
So we need to put levels in the set so that a child can stand on a level next to Barney, so that we can push in and there's an intimacy there. And I'm going, oh, Pa.
And you see the levels.
Here's a colored, beautiful rendering.
So
this is like a light.
This was the original. This was
in Las Colinas.
That was the tree house that I designed.
The colors are so bright.
And
you see all the levels that he's talking about.
Can we go back to the original sketch? That was the first.
Is that
one.
did you sketch that? Is that your drawing?
The first sketch?
Yeah.
Right
yes,
here.
that one right there.
Gosh, you're good.
So that was the concept sketch for this. Now, that is the hugest treehouse in the universe. I mean, it's like
think about the tree holding that up.
It's like cracked open. But here, what I was interested in doing was to show a variety of place and space. And here, because I don't think we ever saw this shot. I had to show the whole world to show the concept,
right?
But we never saw this wide shot. There was no reason to. We were always relatively, in shooting angles and whatever. But I want you to see all the different levels that are here. So the levels are basically surrounding the floor acting area. So Barney would find himself on the floor, and he could go to stand next to one of those levels, and there would be a child right next to him, and you could do an intimate thing where they were talking. So that was a big part of it.
And we will have those on our website just to make sure. We'll put those pictures up on the website so that people will really be able to understand what we're
and get
talking
a good look
about.
at things.
Yes.
And so we had a couple entrances to the set, one on one side, one on the other. We also had that table right there, if you see there's a bucket on that table, and there's a hole in the middle of the table. And that hole went down to the ground, so that what we had is the kids could take a bucket and go down into this table, and then we'd cut.
And go to the other set.
We'd cut to the other set.
Put the kids in the bucket?
No.
Wait.
No. The kids would be playing, and there would be like, they'd bring up play toys or something like that.
But it was two different sets. So you would put it in here as they were going down, and then we would stop and go to the next.
Sneaky people.
You would cut to the tree and the schoolyard, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And the bucket would come down, and they'd put notes in it or whatever.
Right.
So they did that, and then that stair unit that's facing us. And this is the nerd talk I was telling you earlier.
He told me to stop him if it gets too nerdy.
If I get too much in this nerd
please,
talk, just stop me.
Please.
But the stair unit that's facing you with the little carpet on it, that actually was on a pivot. And you could pivot it to one side and open up the area over there where the hammock is. Or you could pivot it to the other side and open it up where that table was. So, and then there would be singing and dancing, so the kids could promenade around on levels as Barney was following them around, and you could get that intimate, foreshot.
Yes.
But you didn't feel like the kids were on levels. I mean,
you didn't, because it was subtle. It was subtle. It was all built into their world, and it's more like it just happened to be that way.
Right.
So, and then the other thing is, well, how do I make this thing that's on the ground in our studio look like a treehouse? So I had to have trees like breaking through the window areas, breaking through the openings, and
But you always had to keep in mind that purple suit.
And this was not the set that I worked on. So this was David Joyner that was doing.
Oh, really? Did you not ever work on this set?
I did not go on this set. This is when I was on the road. So this is when I was touring.
Yes.
Now, I have been to this set, and I had come out to Las Colinas, but this was David's.
So let me tell you about this scene right here, this part of the set. So the kids would go up those little stairs, and then there is another little set of stairs where they would disappear going even higher. And then we had a pinnacle set where the kids were up at the pinnacle of the treehouse, but that was in an entirely different studio, and it was we rolled around, but we never saw it on the floor. And so the kids were up there, and it was a blue sky behind them, and they could get to with binoculars and see the whole neighborhood or whatever, So that was kind of cool. And then they got down.
And look at this.
They got down from that pinnacle.
Almost looks like NASA or something.
By going through a chute. So anyway, how do we get this giant dinosaur who's probably close to 4 feet wide?
Yeah.
Up stairs, up to the treehouse. And I think the other treehouse had stairs going up, and they were wide. They were like cedar or whatever. I don't know. I felt like I wanted something that felt a little bit more magical to me. And so what this ended up being was a giant spiral staircase. So instead of the center post of the spiral being 5 inches around, it just became this tube, which was, I don't know, it looked like 30 inches.
Right.
And we cut holes in it because we wanted a puppet.
Yes.
A puppeteer in the tree. So we had to get in the tree. So there's how we got in the tree.
Right there.
And then we got this bark from.
I was going to say that looks real.
Well, this was cast bark we got from Las Vegas. Somebody built something in Las Vegas, and this bark became available. And so we put that on the tree, and then the rest of that white stuff, and that's how the finished tree looked.
Yeah, look at that.
You would have no idea what went into that.
I know. And so that hole right there is for the puppeteer, and there was a squirrel, I think.
Yes.
Puppet.
Yes.
And you'd go up halfway, and the squirrel would stick its Mr. McNutty, I think is that his name?
Scooter.
Yeah, Scooter McNutty.
Yeah.
Mr. McNutty.
I love having two grown men sitting here talking about Scooter McNutty.
Scooter McNutty. Right.
But this is what we love because, one of the comments we get is that I had no idea how big this show was, how big this, and you're getting to see
so
how
if you
involved
pause,
this
can
was.
you go back to that wide shot of the, yes. So that's the
Looks like a
playground.
school. Okay.
And you can see to the right where the tree entrance is. But I just wanted to tell you a couple things from a scenic standpoint here. So there we have levels.
You notice again levels all over that.
And that fence was on casters, so we could wild it away. So it was what they called a wild,
right, so
wild
you can just
scenery.
roll this out.
Roll it out, okay.
And so we could line cameras up there and do that, or push cameras up on the lawn. The other thing is that big window unit there, all the glass in that window unit is tilted forward so that we don't reflect the lights of the studio. So it's still glass and there's reflection when you get up close to it, but we don't. So yes.
No, keep going.
Okay, so then over to the right-hand side, okay, you have the front door, but over to the right side where you have those other windows that go in, that happens to go into a classroom, that entire wall, and you can see, it's called a pilaster, where that brick thing goes up, that becomes like a giant footing, and that entire wall came out and was wild,
right?
So that cameras could then shoot the classroom and the entire classroom without being stuck against a wall. And so, and these these are the things that Jim and Ben and Jeff taught me, about things that they would like to see happen.
Because they had been dealing with a set that was half park, half school.
Oh, that's the original.
The original.
Oh, gosh.
So
it was tiny.
The amount of freedom that Bob gave them, and all the different play areas and all the different things we could now do.
It wasn't a big jump from that to this. There was an interim treehouse set, which was really nice.
Yes,
also.
yes.
It was just different.
Right.
And so, and so that little patch of grass in front of that wild wall was really just on a piece of plywood, and we have to pull that out so we could caster that wall out and then put it back. Anyway. Nerd talk. Here we are.
No. I mean, so how many sets were there?
So.
I mean,
okay.
Because I was involved with the train as we.
Okay, so there's all manner of different sets.
Yes.
There's home sets. So this would be a home base set.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the treehouse home base set. Then we segued. We had a hiatus.
Yes.
And then when we came back.
We
moved to a different location completely.
We did, Christmas Star, right?
Pardon me?
In Las Colinas, the Christmas video. With the elves and all of.
Yes.
Yes, I was involved in that one.
That's
the first one that I came in.
Yes.
After the hiatus.
So I remember we had this hiatus, and then. Oh gosh, Jocelyn Stevenson.
Yes.
Came on board.
And that is?
Okay, so now Lyric Studios had been sold to Hit Entertainment.
Yes.
And we had to come up with a new concept. And, felt like the Treehouse thing had kind of played it. We'd wanted something new and different. Had played itself out. So what now? And so they went back to Cheryl because, Cheryl had some great ideas. And so between Cheryl Leach, between Cheryl Leach and Jocelyn, and I'm sure others, Jocelyn Stevenson used to work with Jim Henson. She wrote Fraggle Rock. They worked together and wrote stuff together. And Hit Entertainment hired her to be an artistic anchor, a consultant, whatever. And I don't know if that's exactly right.
Right.
It's close.
It sounds good.
Right. And she was living in Scotland, and Hit Entertainment was in London, and so she flew over here, and now our home company is in London. Hit Entertainment, and we said that they kept a lot of the same creators and players
yes.
to create a new world. And so we talked about, well, what is that? We want it to be part private, part public. We wanted it to be, because we didn't want to have to people our world all the time. You know, it's like the school. A lot of the stuff in the school was after school.
Right.
You know, it wasn't during school, so we didn't have to hire 50 children to run around.
Right.
And wrangle.
Extras everywhere and all of
wrangle
that.
50 children. So in this case, so we're going, well, where is our other place? Well, we decided it was going to be like a community center, a children's play place, whatever. Well, what is that? So Cheryl had this idea of, you know, a depot, a train depot. And so, and really, I had no idea how this caboose thing came about, because when we will see this in a minute here, because I don't know if I introduce the idea that we don't want to just go into a door of a building. I guess there was something about a train, and somehow I got the idea is like, let's take an old train and chop one side of it off, and that is hooked to this building and becomes the entrance. I know it sounds weird, doesn't it?
I'm just trying. I'm not as visual as you are, so I'm just trying to figure this out.
But even now to say it sounds strange. But anyway, so we had this park, caboose, and in the park we wanted to have levels, and now we have a lot of trees. You know, when you see this park image, we're in a park, and
here we go.
So,
it is snow.
Here is a case where we would take our park, which was really summer, and we would take portions of it and turn it into winter. And you can see some of the leaves on the trees there are still very green, but we'd put evergreens out there to kind of seed the season, so to speak. And you
see the train here, the cut train.
Sure.
Of the building.
Well, be sure, and again, I need to encourage you to be sure to go to our YouTube site,
and
Purple Tales Podcast,
podcast.com.
and to see these pictures and to take a look at them.
So
oh my goodness!
What I love about this is kind of like behind the scenes, which is really kind of cool that people never get to see.
No, does this have anything to do with Santa's workshop?
Yes, this is the same video at which we're going to talk about Santa's workshop. And this is a PBS episode.
Okay.
Okay. So
because there's a rumor about Santa's workshop episode.
Yes. So
this was in Carrollton, by the way.
This was in Carrollton.
Okay.
This was in a building that no one would ever know we were in the building.
No.
I mean, we didn't say Barney and Friends on the door. We really, again, like we did at Las Colinas, we didn't want children coming and thinking they're going to see Barney.
Right. So then
they see Carrie.
You'd have no idea. You just drive by this building and have no idea what was happening.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. And so we would get batting and put it on the ground and the plastic snow, and then I had them buy some crystal glitter, because I wanted the snow to glitter. So we threw that around. And then, so there would be a team that would come, sometimes they would come at night and dress the set, and we'd show up in the morning and it looked like, magical winter, and I'm aghast. And again, that fence over there, you can see it's just part of a fence, and that's on casters, and that rolls away.
Right out.
And so, so we could probably move on. And so, okay, so let's stop here. So I have to tell this story.
I love there's an interesting. Is that a person back there?
Well,
is that
it
a shadow
happens to be a
of
stagehand back there.
No.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Because he looks kind of creepy. It almost looks like a Scrooge or something.
This wasn't a show shot. This was like, this was setting it up, and I took some pictures.
You got to see this one.
So that floor you're looking at is actually the gazebo area in the park. Originally, this park had a true gazebo. I designed one. I put it in there, and it looked great.
I know we used it.
The trouble with it was really hard to light because it was dark, and we tried everything to do that, and it was always a gazebo. This became a platform to become other things, and here's a case in point. So let me tell you about this script briefly. So what was really interesting about working on this show, as opposed to live theater, you work on a play. That script is sacred. You can't touch it. You might be able to drop a few lines or whatever, but you can't do anything. These scripts being made in-house, written by Stephen White and others.
Who we have had as a guest.
You know, exactly. And we could comment on the feasibility of them based on the intention of the script. This script asked for, we go to Santa's workshop, and I'm going, you know, bells are going off in my head.
Right.
Going, A, we don't have money or the space to do Santa's workshop, because talk about expectations.
Right.
You know? So, but because this was a whole Christmas thing,
yes.
and we were going to go to Santa something,
right,
and it was going to be in this space,
yes,
I said, I had this idea. I said, why don't we go to the place at Santa's workshop that no one ever gets to go to or sees? What is that? It's the place where all the presents are done being wrapped, and they're stacked up, ready to go for the night. And so here's this picture. So we need to stay on this picture for a minute. So
you're so right. I mean, we always see the elves working on the packages and putting them on the belt.
But we never
got to see this with packages and packages and packages.
I thought of the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones. You know, it's just like miles of stuff. I can imagine what you're not seeing here is like warehouse full of.
It's just you're in a room full of just brightly colored, gorgeous packages.
Yes. So this room is not a room. This room is actually the park.
This is the park.
And you knew that,
yes.
Carrie.
Well,
and so
obviously working on this.
And that piece of green wood underneath the table is covering the grass that was peeking through.
That's the park at the.
And so here's the idea I had. I said, why don't we go to the place where the kid where we never see, and let's make walls of presents. And why don't we get our little people, dinos, who never get to be on camera, be elves as themselves? And there they
there's
are.
A wonderful picture of the three of them. So
a couple people that have been here.
That's right.
And
we've got Kyle,
yes,
who played BJ.
Yes.
Adam Brown, who was Riff
yes.
at the time, and then Jeff Ayers, who was guest number one here.
Guest number one.
Exactly.
So how did that? Was that pretty cool for them? I guess.
They loved it. Oh my gosh, they got
divas right there is what I had to deal with that week.
Exactly. So what I said, why don't we have them be the rappers? Why don't we have them sing a rap song about rapping? And so Joe wrote a rap song.
We talked about
about rapping. And it just turned out so well, you know. I remember the PA we hired. We hired, PAs, they're just like sitting around waiting to be
Production
called.
Production
assistant, waiting around to be called.
Right.
I remember the first time, because I didn't do television. And the first time a couple of meetings with my art director, Elizabeth Felton, the wonderful Elizabeth Felton. She would say, well, we'll get a PA for that. We'll get a PA for that. We'll get a, and I'm going, stop. What's a PA? I said, well, they're production assistants. We call them and they come do stuff. I said, what are they, like in the closet somewhere and you wind them up? What? How? Basically so. And what do they do? Anything you want them to do. They'll come blow up balloons. They'll come, So this guy wrapped presents for like a week and a half every day. Just,
We need to find
because those walls were like 16 feet tall and 20 foot to get camera coverage. And so,
and it's pretty good wrapping. Obviously, some of the bows were already made, but my wrapping never looks that good.
Well, I'd walk through the room and I'd say, I need more chocolate sprinkles. Can you, put some more stuff on there?
Taskmaster.
Yes.
That's great.
But look
beautiful.
at those wonderful costumes that Lisa designed.
Lisa Albertson.
Lisa Albertson. Is she going to be doing this?
I'm talking to Lisa. Yes.
Oh, you have to have her come. She's the best.
She is.
Yeah.
It's funny you use the word expectations. Expectations.
Exactly.
And I know Carrie, they had expectations for Barney. They have expectations for the set. But what did that mean when you were working on these things? I mean, and same thing as Barney.
Well, my talking about expectations in this case was talking about Santa Claus. You know, if you're going to do anything Santa Claus, it has to be different, magical, and somehow fit within the whole sort of mind space of the fantasy that children have about Santa Claus.
Right.
So, but you know, expectations. You know, I think there were certain things that we expect here from Barney, is that it will be. This is what I remember that the producers kept talking about. You know, is innocence. We are. You know, older kids, you know, they'd rag on Barney. You know, they probably were secretly liking Barney, but they would rag on Barney. And it's about, and I often tell people, you know, Barney's just a big purple lump of love. You know, that's how I would describe
we're
him.
going to use that one again.
Okay.
Big
because
purple lump.
In some ways, you know, people would talk about, well, his eyes don't move and his mouth doesn't, but there was something very comforting about that image and that character. He was real, but he wasn't too real in my mind. And I know there was a time in the company where they tried to make him very real, and it felt odd. You know what I mean? There were experiments to do that, but so the expectations of playing into innocence, okay? That was like a blanket mantra that we all kind of, if we didn't talk about it all the time, we kind of knew that, you know? So, and that came from the vision carriers. That came from Dennis. That came from Jim. That came from Jeff and Ben. Lovely Ben.
Yes.
And you too. I mean, you understood those expectations as Barney.
Well, I grew that quick. You know, mine was different experience in the fact that I was seeing these kids on the road. You know, I was in person with them, and so I realized very quickly how real he was, how much they loved him. It was their friend, and so I learned very quickly the lump of love.
Sure. And you know what's interesting is I think they got that sense of innocence from their experience of seeing Barney in the early days with the blue dog, as they used to call him. Do you remember the blue dog?
Yes, I do.
So
wait. Blue dog.
Okay, Barney, and I've just only seen pictures of this, but one of the original Barney costumes was like an exposed foam, and he was very boxy looking and whatever. But I think there was an attempt to like, what color should he be? He should be purple, but they spray painted the costume or something grape purple. And grape purple, the camera hates that. It doesn't know, am I red? Am I blue? Am I red? Am I blue? And it would then turn blue because that magenta ended up being the perfect color, and it's not purple, it's magenta.
Oh, right.
Because the camera can read that, and it's look at this. Look how he pops in that space.
Yes.
Yeah, the picture shows a very purple, not magenta Barney.
I would tell people there's nothing that big and that magenta in the world.
And you see all the action going on in that picture, and your eye goes right to
exactly
to Barney. You're so right.
Exactly, you're drawn to him, and look at him. He's kind of like staring off into the distance. He's both real and kind of unreal. I think a child's allowed to like project whatever fantasy the child had onto this character, because he was somewhat of almost of a loving tabula rasa, as they say. A blank slate.
Okay. Say that again.
Tabula rasa. I can't say it again. I get only one tabula rasa out of my mouth per day. So anyway, and so that whole thing about innocence.
Yes.
It was so great. I remember in the Barney Bible, they had a drawing of Barney's head. Okay, and it was like this. And it was like Barney looking straight, and it was a drawing, line drawing. And then they had the same exact drawing, and then the same exact drawing, and it said Barney happy, Barney sad, Barney laughing, Barney glad, because his facial expressions were always the same. It came from his attitude. It came from the heart of the voice and the heart of the body that made him be who he was. What the writers gave him to say and be, and his gestures and movements and whatever, it never came out of his face. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So and so there's something very unthreatening about that. There's something very unreal about that, but allowed to be real, you know. So.
I do, and it allowed us, as we do, we talked about doing all these hospital appearances. By movement, I could either be very big and happy, or I could walk in a quiet moment and just come in gentle and
exactly.
And right there, it changed.
When you have to come to a child and it's scripted, we'd say, "Are you all right, Kevin?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you feeling all right? And
by that slower movement, you could tell.
And so
his emotion.
The evolution of this character's costume just got more genius as it went on. They changed the color, they softened him, they changed little things that just made you more drawn to this character. So.
Magenta Tales podcast just doesn't have the same ring, does it?
No, we don't want to do
that. So how many years were you the set designer?
I was the production designer.
Oh, I'm sorry. But isn't it the same thing?
No, it isn't.
I mean, we were just talking about.
Here's the thing. So there's two different worlds. There's theater design, and then there's television design. In television, I'm called the production designer. Now I get to comment on things probably a little bit more than the set itself, but mainly the production designer is the look of everything that is not a costume. Okay? So the world is created by the production designer. Now, in television, the production designer has a set designer. And that set designer's title is to the person who actually drafts up the concept. So I come up with a concept, and then I had a set designer who would draft it up so it could be built, with wood and steel and whatever needs to be done. And so he was called the set designer. In theater, a set designer is a set designer.
And then the set designer has a PA who will be doing the things that you told the set designer. I mean, it's all full circle, right?
Now you get this.
I get this now. So what happened after Barney? Where did you go next, Bob? My original, I was at Casa Mignana for 5.5 years. So that was designed a pile of musicals and shows and whatever. Got into Barney. I did some theater while I was at Barney, but when Barney went on hiatus for the last time, and by the way, probably other people don't know this, everyone went on hiatus, and Barney and Friends were still interested in trying to revive about this, right?
Yes.
The refresh is what they called it.
Yes.
The company. And so there was myself, and I had a set designer with me, and came up with an entirely new world for Barney that no one's ever seen. And I don't know if I could ever divulge that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I think it may not be publishable.
Right.
But you still have it.
Well, I still have it. Yes.
Well, we also have to
now.
talk.
Now there's a teaser, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this was actually going to Where Does Barney Live? Now we did a Come to Barney's House. Were you?
I did not. That was right before me.
Okay. And where does Barney live? What does his house look like? Well, we did that. But this was like, if you were to go to Barney's land, which in some ways was kind of antithetical to the whole original notion of Barney,
Right.
which was basically Barney appears and comes and plays with you as you sort of like call him up or whatever,
Right.
you know. So we did that, and I stayed on for another, couple months, 3 months or something, creating all of that, and that kind of didn't go anywhere, and so went on hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
The last hiatus, we were all wondering, is this going to happen? Is anything, you know? In the meantime, all our lives have to be doing something else. So I went back to my roots and got back into theater set design, and ended up doing stuff that designed opera and was done a lot of sets for Dallas Theater Center.
Anything you learned from Barney that you took then to the next level?
You're talking about scenically, or are you talking about?
I'm just not talking about
which way?
any which way. Yeah, I mean, just, you know.
Well, I can tell you, I learned a lot at Barney, and a lot of it is just, seeped in and all through me in my experience, working with some really fantastic people,
And we haven't mentioned Elise.
Pardon me?
We haven't mentioned Elise.
My daughter, Elise?
Your daughter.
Oh, my gosh. So I have to go back and say, when I talked to you about my introduction to theater at way back when, and met my wife, my future wife, the choreographer. So Susan, my wife, was a dance teacher choreographer when I met her, and in fact she was choreographing Canterbury Tales. Was the
Oh my.
That's do you know that musical Canterbury Tales?
Oh, yeah. Doesn't everyone?
So and
No, I do know it.
I was cast as a lecherous friar in Canterbury Tales. So anyways,
I told you we're going to learn something new each week.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
So I met Susan, and then we got married, and then we had Elise, our daughter, and now Susan's mother, was a dance teacher.
Okay.
Susan became a dance teacher choreographer, and then our daughter Elise became a dancer, teacher, choreographer, and she came and worked on Barney.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
She did.
Right.
She choreographed a lot of stuff with me.
Did you do the?
You did.
Yes.
Did you do the fair video?
I did.
Was that you?
It was me.
Which video? What was it called?
The fair video.
It was shot in Frisco.
That's right.
Yeah. And
Oh
Elise.
my gosh, there's stories on that one.
Yeah.
Oy. So anyway, so our daughter Elise was the assistant choreographer for that. Joel Farrell was
Yes.
the choreographer.
Yes.
But then Elise came in and did stuff for
On the PBS.
PBS.
Yes.
She did. And
Yes.
and she still is a choreographer now. And I just saw a piece she did last week with the Bohemian Rhapsody. She did, and it's a stunner. It was just fantastic. So yeah, she's still doing it.
Well, it's this vision that you all. It must be hereditary. I mean,
I guess I don't know. We are, our family is all involved in the arts. Play as in my introduction to classical music never would have probably done this was through my wife Susan. She'd bring home something, and we hardly do this anymore, but we'd sit in dim light and drink some wine, and she'd have some new Shostakovich album or something. And, Rachmaninoff is a biggie, for us. So
now what are you doing? So you got back into theater and so on. Is that what you're doing now?
Well, yes. And
And you don't just do it locally, right? You're
I don't go off too often. I've done a Christmas Carol at the Zach Theater in Austin, which is still going. They use it every year. And last year I went to Cape Fear Regional Theater and did Sense and Sensibility there in North Carolina. And I'm going to go back in October in another theater in North Carolina in Raleigh and do a reprise of West Side Story that I did at Casa. So the director who I think at that time he lived in New York, but now he's the artistic director of the North Carolina Theater, South Carolina. Raleigh where's Raleigh? North, South?
Raleigh.
Raleigh.
See, there we go.
Raleigh, North Carolina. I think it's Raleigh, South Carolina.
See, okay.
This is where
It's
enough with the geography lesson.
Right.
So the point is, he's now the artistic director of this theater, and I did that 2 years ago with him, and it was really an awesome West Side Story. Of course, West Side Story is awesome. And he asked me if I would do it again. Of course, the set's completely gone, so we're rebuilding the same set.
Oh, wow.
But now it's in a proscenium, and I made it taller and it fit into the theater really well. So I do that.
Well, I'm glad to know you're still working, because I know you did recently get a Lifetime Achievement Award.
I did.
So that's good to know
it's
you.
Not
it's
the
not
end.
just
it's
the
not
end. Okay.
And as I said, it's just time for a new chapter.
And so what was that about?
What about?
Your Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well,
who gave you that?
every year the Live Theater League of Tarrant County, which is both Fort Worth and Arlington and whatever, and they've been doing this for a number of years. They give out awards to colleagues and peers in theater, either to actors or even people that help in community theater. They get awards for being part of that, whatever. And then they give this. Then there's this big award, and it's the Alston Brooks Lifetime Achievement Award. And a number of my friends already have received this. Joel Farrell was one of them already.
Oh, wow.
And David Coffey, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a wonderful actor.
Well, and I believe that Dennis DeShazer, who I know is still one of your dearest, dearest friends, co-creator of Barney, had some lovely things to say about you, right?
Well, I was talking to him lately because of our introduction about this, and I told him I was receiving that award, and he decided to. I wondered if he could make comment about my time at Barney, and he wrote this lovely thing that it was part of my introduction during this award. So.
Well, and just to let you know what Dennis said about you. You don't know what Dennis said about him. Basically, Dennis said, I wasn't fully prepared for all Bob, would bring to the table, a true spirit of collaboration, professionalism, and artistic expertise. But this is it. He was and is an embodiment of the genuine kindness that would come to define our groundbreaking television series and working relationship. That kind of chokes me up, because that is the Barney magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there it is. Oh, look.
That's a montage of a variety of sets.
Oh,
it
my
looks
goodness.
a little out of focus, which is kind of weird.
Did you need glasses?
Maybe that's it.
No.
So
that's lovely.
I created these boards I did a talk at the USITT conference about designing for television, and I had these boards as display for Barney.
Wow. There's a lot of memories right there.
There it is.
And a lot of memories, and definitely such.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so visual. So
Sure.
anyone who is listening to us, make sure you go to our website and our podcast. And there's a big old purple Barney.
And that's the last. That's the last image I bought, where Barney would be saying, "Hey, thanks for coming on over to my house."
Well, you know what? We want to say thanks to Bob for coming over to our house.
Absolutely.
How about that? And it is Raleigh, North Carolina, just so
it
you'll know.
is.
I just thought I was able to check that out.
The power of the external brain.
Yes,
Brain.
That's right. You'll come back, I hope.
Well, I would love to. There's plenty more images and whatever, but I'm sure, as you well know, you're here every week and you come up with stuff that is memories. It's endless.
It is. It's been so fun, because I learn each week so many things I didn't know, and it's just fascinating to see these, because I played on these sets for so long. But
you played on them. That's the thing. You really did play on them, didn't
that's
you?
what it felt like.
Well, when your work is play,
yes,
You're blessed.
You're very lucky. It's the Barney magic. Thank you, Bob. Carrie, another one. This is 12, isn't it? Number 12. This is kind of exciting.
It is so much fun.
So, like us on Facebook, Bob, please.
I will.
Like us, find us, watch us, listen to us. Thank you.
PurpleTailsPodcast.com. You can see all these pictures.
Are you sure magenta didn't? No.
Magenta's...
No.
That's not gonna work. Okay.
But it is magenta.